Thank you.
Thank you for the introduction. We are honored and pleased to be here. So, hello again. We are your host for the Technology Enabled track, and I'm Miguel Fernandez. I'm in Brussels, Belgium.
I am
And
Ciprian
Cyprian.
Boga. Hello from Bucharest, Romania.
So we both work as transformation advisors, and we act sometimes as consultants, sometimes as coaches, and we help companies to move to the next level. So we are extremely pleased to welcome Graham Binks today with us. And hi, Graham.
Hey, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you very much, Graham. Graham, I think you are the CEO of Prime Fusion. You're located in Canada, although originated from the UK, and you help business to build the business of the future. You're an author, speaker, strategist, and coach, and I think your last book is called Trusting Technology. So if I missed something, please do so. Introduce yourself in a more extended way. The floor is yours.
You bet. Thank you very much. Well, it's great to be here, and I'm so excited. This is a global event. It's fantastic. It really is. I'd like to say thank you to everyone who's put this on. It's very exciting to be part of it. So a little bit more background on me. I've spent more than 30 years in the technology industry in various capacities. I've been a chief technology officer, brought actually dozens of software products to market over the years. I've been a chief information officer, buying technology to make my businesses run more efficiently. And for the last 12 years, I've run my own company, Prime Fusion. So essentially, I help leaders build a better business on technology. That's been my career mission. As we all know, that's the definition of what that means has changed a lot in the last 3+ decades, and it keeps changing, and that keeps me excited. So today, I primarily advise CEOs. I coach ambitious leaders, technology leaders, non-technology leaders around how they can better use technology in their business. But I talk less about the tech and more about the practice of technology, what it means to imagine the future, what it means to use technology as a platform for our ideas, and how we de-risk, if you will, the use of that platform so we get to our goals more effectively. I do see technology as a platform for ideas. I think that's fundamental. And I think if I was to sum up my experience in technology, really helps us do two things, and it's only two things. One is it helps us spread information and generate insights. And secondly, I think it allows us to turn those insights into economical action. So if we talk about information technology, what we share, how we share it, and then I always say, if we can describe how we do something in words, we can code it. And if we can code it, we can get to some level of automation to help people achieve their goals more quickly.
Graham, if I may ask you, I mean, I think this resonates quite a lot with the original narrative of this conference. Because basically, if we want to transform technology or data into insight, what about the fact that our environment is more and more uncertain and more volatile? So basically, it becomes difficult to transform data into insights. What your customers are doing regarding this uncertainty?
Yeah, it's an excellent and very timely question. And I think some of the speakers said this morning, earlier, I should say, my morning, you know, there's never been, I think it says this behind you actually, there's never been a normal. I think our perception of that has changed dramatically in the last few months. We have, obviously we have a global pandemic, and we have global attention on some other very important issues that have really ignited a lot of movements here. So if we're to take one thing away from that, I think there is no one future. I always say a plan is just a theory. If we're to be better prepared for the future, I think we need to stop thinking in terms of one plan and think about multiple plans. Scenario planning, I think, is always a common term for that. Yeah, let's understand the range of things that might happen try and simplify it. Maybe we'll pick 4 options. We'll say this is the one we think is going to happen. But if either of these, any of these other 3 emerge, then we're better positioned to pivot and change and adapt.
What is the answer of the CEOs? I understand actually you are working for CEOs and thus for CIOs.
Mm-hmm.
What is an answer of the CEOs in front of the crisis when it's about technologies? What is your perception, especially in the last 3 months?
Yeah, I think the perception is first and foremost to shorten the planning timeframes. You know, we've heard of the typical 3-year planning cycle that many businesses follow. Some businesses, particularly Japanese culture, for example, they look 25 years out. And while it's still okay to do that, I think you have to have your North Star and where you want the business to go. All of my clients and also the many CEOs that I talk to are really shortening their horizons. The tool that a lot of companies have adopted, well, you have to understand. So some of my customers, some of my clients, some of my contacts are certainly in the tech industry, but most of them are not. They're non-tech leaders, and so if you've grown up in the tech industry, you've grown up in a very volatile environment. Just because our circumstances change, what technology can do today is quite different from what it could do 5, 10, 20 years ago. So in some ways, we're maybe a little hardened to the unexpected. And in the software industry, you know, we have this thing called Agile. It has its roots, we know, in Toyota, et cetera. So it's not exclusive, but a lot of companies that haven't been exposed to Agile, or maybe have given it lip service for many years, were forced 3 months ago, give or take, to become Agile. They didn't even know they were becoming Agile, but now they're starting to reflect back and go, hey, look what we did. We actually overcame the immediate crisis, and now we're in somewhere between a survival and prosper mode. So I think what a lot of CEOs are doing is they're shortening up the timelines. They're thinking, you know, more broadly, as I was saying, with scenarios about what could change in the very near future. And they're looking out for the weak signals and strong signals that indicate you should change now, because that isn't going to happen. What you thought was going to happen 3 months ago is not. It's going to be this. So I think it's, I bring it down to that great word, agility. I think many more CEOs are thinking in an agile fashion now. And I have to say, I've been so impressed at how leaders have really done that.
I'm very curious how many of our attendees are on IT side or on a management side. My question would be, how is the CIO in this battle to overcome the crisis? What is his position towards the CEO?
Yeah, that's a strong matter of opinion. But I would say, I mean, when I was a CIO, I always saw my role as something of a disruptor or a troublemaker. So it was my role to challenge the way my companies were operating. And so if, as a CEO, you're already doing that, I think it's keep up the good work. And perhaps your CEO will give you more support now as a result of what's happened. If you haven't inherently done that, and this doesn't matter whether you're a CIO, this applies really to any role in the company. If that's not the way you've thought in the past, I'd encourage everybody to start thinking that way. And really to do that, to disrupt, or to at least offer the prospect of disruption, you have to start by disrupting yourself, which is a whole interesting topic. And I think that ties into anti-fragility.
Well, certainly. I mean, the way to disrupt internally requires, I mean, a new way of thinking. And I would say, are you now in a position to say that some of the customers or a part of the market is trying to think differently in regard of stress? Well, instead of trying to avoid the risk, that they try to take benefit of this risk, they try to find new ways to take opportunities from these risks?
Yeah, I think it's early days to expect companies and leaders to have fundamentally changed how they operate. But I do think most of the ones I talk to are saying we need to fundamentally change. The dust hasn't settled, right, on this, and who knows when it will settle. I think there's still grappling with how do we either recover our business, how do we save our business? In some cases, unfortunately, is how do we wind it down? I haven't seen yet a lot of evidence that leaders have really started to get their heads around how that's going to change. But my view of what's happened is, every business, every society has been disrupted to some degree from the outside, meaning outside of their control. I think a great way to look at this is to say, don't use this as a springboard to understand how you're going to survive, but use it as a springboard to appreciate the value of disruption. You've had to deal with it. Look back and take pride and confidence in the fact that you have dealt with it, but now take it as a springboard to start to disrupt yourself, start to question. There's a key question I think that resonates with me is, we've all got customers, internal, external, don't care. We've all got customers. The question is, what will it take for that customer not to need what we do anymore? Well, not to need our products if they're business customers of our business, not to need our skills if we're employees of a business or if we're entrepreneurs. Because answering that question, firstly, it's hard. It's very hard, but it's a skill I think we all need to practice, because answering that question really opens up the door to understand how we could be disrupted, and therefore, what are we going to do about it? So really, I think to get back to your question, leaders are starting to think about how do we change? And my suggestion is that's one key question that they could ask themselves every day, quite frankly.
And today, do you think that, basically a good way, what could be a good way to approach this kind of question? I would say operationally.
Yeah, well, I would say be open to it. Pose the question to yourself, but whatever you do, pose the question to your customers. I mean, we've all got customers who we can trust, and we'll take that question in a healthy way. And pose the question to people who don't understand your industry. I've been lucky enough to work in dozens of industries, 250 businesses basically over the years. And what I love about that, firstly, is the variety, but also I love that I can learn something in one industry and apply it as an advisor to someone else in a completely different industry. So if you can find people who are not in your space, not experts in what you do, they might be more likely to ask you the penetrating questions. And so consult opinions, and again, be open to the answers that you receive and absorb them and use the information. Again, it's an example of information that you receive in answer to a question, generating insight.
Very well said. So market connectivity becomes key in interpenetration of various sectors, various industries, can bring some new types of solutions, so new types of thinking.
Yeah.
Well, this comes to invite me to address these questions related to the complexity, because basically, even if market connection is very, very good, we have lots of various customers now. We do not interpret customers via a super persona. So how to address this diversity in an efficient way?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I might say that's the $64 million question, isn't it? I mean, when you let me try and answer that like this. If you're in the consulting business, by nature, the work you do, each project you do, is for a specific customer. So it's very custom. If you're in the product business, of necessity, in order to scale, you need to abstract a little bit around what your generic customer needs and ship a product that does that, and continue to refine as that market need evolves. So I think with products, we talk more about markets. With consulting, we talk more about clients. I think the value is if you can bridge that gap. So I believe the best way to start a software company, product company, if you will, but I'm going to say software, is through consulting, because that gives you an intimate connection to your pioneer clients, if you will, and it gives you an opportunity to develop greater expertise in their domain. Once you understand their domain, that's the time to start saying, okay, I can create a product that addresses, you know, many more examples like this. But I think to answer your question, there's no such thing as a one size fits all, unless we're talking about shoe sizes, and even then. So I think you need to balance that deep consultation with your customers with just smart abstraction in terms of what you put in your product. But you need to continue to have that spirit of evolution so that your product stays paced with the market.
Okay. Well, sounds extremely interesting. I'm just having a concern. Afterwards, even if we know correctly our markets and we have a product, the evolution of the customers is so rapid that we need to find a way to avoid rigidity in what we do. Mm-hmm. So how do you think the customers should, the companies should see today the review of their strategies, of their product design, compared to the classic approach that they have today?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we're kind of coming towards this waterfall versus agile thing, aren't we? You know, if I'm a property developer and I'm going to build a 60-story glass tower in downtown Toronto here, where I am, I can't really build it in an agile way, right? I have to have blueprints. I have to construct it. Time was when software was built that way, and unfortunately, some companies still do it that way. But the beautiful thing about software is it's so malleable. So if it's malleable, we want to release the constraints around, here's a blueprint, this is what we're going to build, we'll ship this in 2 years' time. I think there's a general understanding consensus of that now, but I still see many companies have not really embraced that philosophy. But the one thing, and anyone here who is familiar with Agile, the one thing that's most important is that as you build things in short sprints, you don't do it absent the customer voice. There has to be someone representing the customer in that cycle. And you have to build it with uncertainty in mind. So you have to consult and change. And of necessity, depending on the complexity of the problem you're going to solve, you can't necessarily turn an oil tanker in 5 minutes, as it were. But you still have to be open to that change. And you still have to be closely engaged with customers. Maybe they're your best customers. We're probably all familiar with Everett Rogers' adoption of innovations and the whole concept that Jeffrey Moore talked about, crossing the chasm. Are we talking about with customers that are the early adopters or the majority? But you have to be open to that feedback. A lot of great technology is inspired by one person having a great idea and getting lucky that it was the right idea for the market. I think the ideas can be seeded with an entrepreneur, but the sooner that entrepreneur is open to the customer saying that's actually wrong, and Steve Blank writes a lot about this, the greater degree of success. And then they can build to be flexible as opposed to build to be rigid.
We have 10 more minutes, and maybe it's a moment to invite our attendee, if they have questions, to type them in question and answer. And we'll present them to Graham. And I would like to take from here, just coming something to my mind. I remember a study published, I think, by Altimeter about digital transformation. It was a couple of years ago, before the crisis and so on. And it was a very interesting result, something like less than a third of the projects of digital transformation are not led by the IT manager or the IT director. Mm-hmm. You say that there are companies who are somehow exposed to Agile and agility, and this comes mostly from the IT. Is there a gap where the IT managers, the CIOs can take an opportunity and grow from this? How do you see?
Yeah, there is, but I don't think the answer lies in technology. And to me, absolutely, digital transformation is simply a mindset, and the digital part, quite honestly, is optional. If a company has a mindset of what we've talked about here, openness, agility, et cetera, and then it can deliver on that mindset in low-tech ways, that's perfectly fine. My fear is that digital transformation has been used as a term for, let me say, technology marketing, which we're all subject to, right? As a CIO, Call Display was actually a killer app for me because it meant I didn't have to pick up the phone every time I was contacted by a technology salesperson. But I think it's more an attitude of transformation, and this is a technology stream in a much broader conversation. So I would say to any technology leaders today, listen to the whole of today's event, not just this thread, because it's the other parts that will inform how we use technology to bring those ideas to life.
Do we have to manage that with only one company, or do we have to manage that within a community of companies?
Yeah. I've in my book, Trusting Technology, I have this concept, and I draw an ellipse to represent a community and a box inside that to represent the company. What I say is, if when we're doing any kind of transformation, digital or otherwise, we think inside that box, we might fine-tune some of the internals of a company, but we won't deliver value that's evident to the community. The community, by the way, is customers, it's prospects, but also it's the ecosystem. It's not just people who will monetize, if you will. If, on the other hand, we think in terms of, as you say, multiple companies or multiple consumers, if you're in business to consumer industry, we'll think bigger. I'm a big advocate of that. We'll think bigger, and we'll think about forging connections across the community, which I believe is the way for any business to prosper. So it's a bit of a cliche to say think outside the box, but that's my interpretation of thinking outside the box, is being exactly as you say, inclusive of others.
And do you think that this inclusion of various companies into the kind of, would say, creative ecosystem would allow less rigidity and improve the ability to respond to change, but not only respond to change, to evolve into a different way, I would say, compared to what we see standalone companies?
Yeah, I think evolution for sure. The question of rigidity is an interesting one, though, because we choose our friends, and if we choose friends that are just like us, we're kind of building in rigidity. On the other hand, if we go for a diverse audience, diverse customer base, diverse friends, if you will, that's when we lose rigidity. So I think diversity is paramount to this. If I ask the opinion of someone who's similar background to me, I'm going to get affirmation that what I thought was right. But if there's a million people out there that aren't, and there are a million people out there that aren't from the same background of me, that's the opinions I'm most interested in.
Have you got any example regarding this kind of, I would say, improvised collaboration between different entities? We've seen that with the COVID-19, for example. I just don't want to expand on that, but we have seen some new ecosystems arising on the market simply because some companies were not able to cope with the situation if they stood alone. So have you observed that within your own markets?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll try, I mean, there are many examples, but let me try and distill them down into one. What I have seen is maybe counterintuitive, but we'll talk about the move to video, right? We're all TV stars now. We're all on TV. We're all on TV today. Whereas 3 months ago, if this event had been held, maybe we would have been met in a hotel somewhere. There's this inherent belief that you can't develop strong relationships unless you actually meet someone in person. And I subscribe to that. But what I will say is the ability to click a button and have a 15-minute video conversation with 20 people a day, 20 customers, 20 colleagues, has really, I think, tightened links between companies and their partners and companies and their customers. So instead of sending email or picking up the phone, we're now talking to each other. We're seeing each other's home backgrounds. We're getting to know each other better. So I think, I'm not sure if this really answers your question, but I think that the big takeaway I've seen is that relationships are are being strengthened by this mode. I would not say that we should continue to live like this forever, but I do think this mode is it's a trend that was coming for many years. Like you guys, I've been on Zoom for 8 years, I think. But the kind of barriers to its adoption, this method, have been blown down, and I don't think they're going to go back up again. So I think the ability to connect personally is stronger now with the addition of this tool.
What can we do concretely to help those companies going forward with this kind of approach?
Yeah, I think to me, it's about practicing new skills. So I would say, whether this is a daily habit or something you do on the weekend, it's a personal choice. But I would say, challenge yourself, challenge your assumptions every day, and take any insights that come to that and convert them into action. What are you going to do about it? And then challenge your community. This is a community we're forming here. Publish your ideas, whether you write a blog or record video or audio, it doesn't matter, but get your ideas out there and be respectfully provocative, and help others see how they can change. And in return, I think you'll learn from them. So if I was to say one takeaway from here is think of some tiny habits that you can develop as a result of what you hear today, and how you're going to put those into action.
We have a question from the public related to the health field. It's coming from Dana. How do you see digital transformation in the health sector?
Yeah, this is a great one, and this is something that I've watched for many years. As systems thinkers, we can, it's not hard to identify how complex systems like the healthcare system can operate more efficiently with more sharing of information. The barrier I think we've seen in healthcare is not really the underlying technology, it's the concerns over privacy. Very understandable. But what I'm impressed by is that faced with the challenge and opportunity of bringing technology to bear to help in the COVID crisis, we're seeing, for example, what's happening in Germany over the last 10 days. We're seeing people kind of push down that barrier on privacy. So the contact tracing application that I think the German government is now promoting adoption, widespread adoption, doesn't impinge on privacy because it's all anonymous. So they found a way to use technology to great effect in healthcare without causing privacy concerns. Privacy is a whole nother topic, which we could have a whole nother day-long session on, of course.
Absolutely, it's a huge perspective that occurs on health these days.
It is, but I think there's a level of adaptation that I think we need to consider. And Seth Godin says this: recognize that privacy doesn't exist anymore in the way we knew it. We have to make decisions based on what's the benefit. Now, is the benefit in my giving up certain amounts of privacy in return for more efficient healthcare? I now don't have to go to the doctor's office for minor afflictions. I can probably have an online consultation or get medicine online. What does that mean for the medical system? They can focus on perhaps more severe needs. It's a form of flattening the curve, but not in the context of this virus, in the context of all illness. So I'm a big promoter of, I think healthcare probably is the biggest single technology potential for humanity. It's worth our focus, whether it's in physical health, mental health, etc. I think there's a lot of opportunity to enrich lives, but we've always got to balance it off with this concern around privacy.
Thank you very much. We are at the end of our panel, and as a question just popped out, I'm sure we will follow all the questions that come from the public to Graham for an answer. And we thank you very much for being today with us.
Yeah, my pleasure. It's great to be here. Thanks.
All the best, and take care.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks a lot, Graham. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Graham. I appreciate it.
You bet.